A 300-year-old mistake may have just damaged one of modern astronomy's safest assumptions. Because sitting in an archive in Italy was a fragile, yellowed parchment covered in delicate hand-drawn markings. Created in the year 1726 by Italian astronomer Francesco Bianchini. For nearly 3 centuries, science treated it as worthless. Just another example of primitive telescopes producing meaningless distortions. Then modern researchers placed that forgotten sketch beside a radar-generated planetary map created by NASA's Magellan mission. And the impossible happened. The shapes lined up. Not perfectly, but close enough to create a problem science still cannot comfortably explain. Because according to everything modern astronomy understands about Venus, Bianchini should have seen absolutely nothing. That old parchment was never supposed to exist. And that changes the meaning of every line drawn on it. In 1726, Francesco Bianchini pointed one of Europe's finest telescopes toward Venus. At the time, Venus was little more than a bright wandering light. No spacecraft, no spectroscopy, no atmospheric science. Just glass lenses, candlelight observations, and hand sketches made over long nights. What Bianchini recorded looked strange even then. Instead of drawing a smooth, glowing sphere, he carefully sketched dark and light surface regions across the visible disk, repeating shapes, continent-like structures, stable patterns that appeared over multiple observations. At first glance, it looked impressive. Later, it looked ridiculous. Because centuries afterward, astronomers discovered what Venus actually is. An entire planet buried beneath an atmosphere almost 60 miles thick. Cloud layers made of sulfuric acid. Surface pressure 90 times greater than Earth. Temperatures hot enough to melt lead. And most importantly, a permanent cloud canopy so dense that visible light cannot penetrate to the surface. Meaning Bianchini's telescope had no physical path to observe terrain underneath. The official explanation became simple. Lens distortion. Optical contamination. Human imagination filling in patterns where none existed. Case closed. For almost 300 years. But then the same drawing returned. And suddenly, the safe explanation started breaking apart. In 1990, NASA launched Magellan toward Venus. Unlike previous probes, Magellan carried synthetic aperture radar, capable of seeing through the thick Venusian atmosphere. Instead of visible light, it used microwave signals to penetrate the cloud layers and bounce directly off the surface. For the first time in human history, scientists could build genuine topographic maps of Venus. Mountains. Basins. Volcanic plateaus. Massive continental-scale structures. It was the first true view of a world hidden for billions of years. Then historians digging through old astronomical archives rediscovered Bianchini's original 1726 parchment. Someone noticed something deeply uncomfortable. The old hand-drawn structures appeared to resemble several broad topographic regions revealed by Magellan. At first, nobody paid attention. Coincidences happen. Humans are excellent at seeing patterns where none exist. But then, statistical comparisons began. The parchment rotated. The digital radar globe rotated beside it. And suddenly the old explanation became harder to defend. The shapes aligned often enough to create measurable correlation. Not random scribbles. Not total fantasy. Patterns matching actual terrain hidden beneath clouds no human should have seen before the 20th century. But that was not the dangerous part. The dangerous part was what this observation forced scientists to reconsider. Because the planet itself had not changed. Only the meaning of the parchment changed. For centuries, astronomy operated under one safe assumption. Before the space age, certain observations were physically impossible. No radar meant no surface mapping. No atmospheric penetration meant no hidden terrain detection. Primitive telescopes had hard limits. That belief created a convenient boundary. Everything observed before modern technology could be categorized neatly as unreliable once it crossed those limits. But Bianchini's sketch refused to stay inside that boundary. If the parchment was not contamination, something far stranger had happened. Venus itself may not have been fully opaque during those observations. That possibility creates a much larger problem. Because Venusian clouds were assumed to be globally stable, permanent, continuous, predictable, a closed atmospheric system. Yet some atmospheric models now suggest Venus undergoes dynamic circulation shifts, powerful enough to temporarily alter cloud density across different altitudes. Rare disruptions, temporary thinning events, localized windows opening for very brief periods. Extremely uncommon, potentially lasting hours or less. Meaning for a brief moment in 1726, Bianchini may have accidentally looked through a temporary atmospheric opening directly at the surface itself. No advanced technology, no radar, no spacecraft. Just perfect timing. And if that interpretation survives scrutiny, the consequence extends far beyond Venus. Because now historians of astronomy face an uncomfortable question. How many early observations were discarded simply because modern science assumed old technology could not possibly work under certain conditions? Not because the observers were wrong, but because later generations trusted theoretical limits more than historical evidence. That yellowed parchment changes meaning again. At first, it looked like bad science. Then, coincidence. Then statistical anomaly. Now it represents something much worse. A warning. Sometimes science does not reject false observations. Sometimes it rejects true observations that arrived too early. The forgotten sketch and the digital radar globe still rotate side by side. The drawing never changed. Only our confidence did. And sometimes, history saw first.